It's May 2025 where we have a decision from Washington State Supreme Court on the Gators Guns case. Anyone that's been hiding under the rock or not following Second Amendment issues, this is a challenge to a so-called large capacity magazine ban enacted by the Washington State Legislature, known as Senate Bill 5078 in 2022, that effectively banned the importation, manufacture, and distribution or sales of magazines of greater than 10 rounds. So, what did the Supreme Court say? What do we need? Where are we going? The Supreme Court said that these are not protected items under the Second Amendment or Article 1, Section 24 of the Washington State Constitution. In other words, these magazines aren't important. They used 3 levels of analysis in their about 15-page opinion. They said, we conclude that LCMs, large capacity magazines, are not protected under Article 1, Section 24 of the Washington State Constitution because LCMs are not instruments designed as weapons. 2, LCMs are not traditionally or commonly used for self-defense. And 3, the right to purchase LCMs is not among the ancillary rights necessary to the realization of the core right to bear arms in self-defense. Further, it is not factually accurate to say LCMs are, quote, integral components of firearms. Those are the reasons your state Supreme Court dismissed your ability to purchase these magazines. They're not integral. They're not designed as weapons. They're not traditionally used for or commonly used for self-defense, and they're not among the ancillary rights related to the Second Amendment. Point in case, that's it. That is the analysis from the majority opinion. The great news is it's a 7-2 decision. Of course, the dissenting opinion carries no legal weight. But 2 justices, Judges Gordon McCloud and Judge Whitener, put their ink to work and really spilled it, protecting your Second Amendment rights. Again, it's a dissenting opinion, so it's not binding. But they talk about how interest balancing is prohibited. And that type of interest balancing wrought by the state Supreme Court in the majority of the opinion is what is subversive to your rights. It's what quelches out oppressive governments use to cease, dissenting opinions. They further state that the so-called large capacity magazines are integral and that they are protected, their ownership and use is protected under the Second Amendment in Article 1, Section 24 of the Washington Constitution. Now, that's the dissent. So it's not the majority opinion, it's not law. What does that mean today? That means that we absolutely need to look at going to the United States Supreme Court, and that's already a conversation that's been underway since even before this got here with our client, Mr. Wentz. I wholeheartedly believe that we're going to take this case and apply for review. It's called writ of certiorari. We're going to request that the U.S. Supreme Court review this. And I think this case has the tentacles the Supreme Court's been looking for. Anyone following Second Amendment issues knows that there are several cases that have kind of been up and down. They've sat and gotten punted by the Supreme Court where they've decided not to take action, whether they'd review and calendar. I think because this is a case from a Supreme Court of a state, not a district court, that's somehow an interlocutory appeal, which is, midstream appeal, not an appellate court from the federal judiciary, but from a state Supreme Court. In other words, it's final action for the entire state of Washington. I think that really, really puts us in a position where the Supreme Court wants to see this. I could be wrong, but as we seek the review on the case, I do think that's the hook, line, and sinker for the Supreme Court. So, Mr. Wentz still has his Consumer Protection Act element that's going back to Cowlitz County. For now, the law is constitutional under Washington state law, and it's time for us to get engaged with the United States Supreme Court. What does that mean? It means we have 90 days to issue basically an appellate brief, a request for review. Get the hook, the line and the sinker into the Supreme Court with that brief and have them decide on it. Now, I want to talk about the importance of your activity in this matter. Silent Majority Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit. You all know that. We talk about that. But our funding is way down, to the tune of we really need help on this case and every other case. We have so many cases that are proceeding forward. We've survived motions to dismiss in other cases that are really critical to protecting your rights. We're in the middle of summary judgment, which may dispose of certain cases. But we need your help. We've got to have you. If we cannot fund the foundation, we cannot do the work. So I'm going to ask that you reach into your wallet and you donate whatever you can, and you call 5 friends or 10 friends or 20 friends and say, this is a worthy cause. I gave, whatever you want to disclose. If you can't do large amounts, do monthly amounts. Forgo that latte or whatever it is that's your habit. $25. If you can do more, do more. That kind of donation is what keeps our lights on. And we desperately need your help to do so. So I'm hopeful that while this isn't the news we wanted out of the Supreme Court today, understanding that there is a path forward back east that could really, really solidify what Americans' rights under the Second Amendment are, what it means today, what the Supreme Court has said and been ignored by these other courts. I believe that's the case that gets the ear of the U.S. Supreme Court, and I believe that's the case that wins the day for your and my rights. We've got to have you on our side. We've got to have your support. Join us at silentmajorityfoundation.org and donate today. God bless and thank you.